Good morning, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Carlos Phillips, President and CEO at the Greenville Chamber. We host these Community Matters discussion every week to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings, as well as the upcoming Community Matters schedule at greenvillechamber.org. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees should be on mute with your cameras turned off. Also, please submit questions through the chat feature. We do want this to be an interactive discussion, so don't forget to submit questions throughout. We all know that user behaviors are changing. So what does that mean for your business and how you need to adapt and innovate to succeed? We've got Thomas Broadus and Bo Rogers with Infinity Marketing with us this morning to answer these questions. Thomas is the Director of Digital Strategy and leads Infinity's digital team. Bo is Infinity's Senior Vice President of Client Services. In this role, he supports account management relationships and explores new business opportunities to grow the agency. Thomas and Bo, good morning.
Good morning, Carlos. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you all for being here this morning. I'm going to turn the show over to you guys. So fire away.
Awesome. Let's just jump into it. So we're going to take some time today and really share some insight and data. Recent data is last month. We're going to be looking at some things that came through the pipeline from some of our partners. I'm excited to share that with you today. But as we get started, we'll do some brief introductions. So Bo, why don't you tell them who you are?
Sure thing. Thanks, Thomas. My name is Bo Rogers, Senior Vice President of Client Services here at Infinity, and I support a multitude of clients across the country, some here in this region, local clients and businesses, and support them with marketing strategy and execution to go reach their business goals.
Yeah. So again, I'm Thomas Broadus. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy, which means that I work with a lot of different teams here at Infinity, from our social media team to our web team to our media buying and placement team, to really provide a high-level overview and an integrated approach on a lot of different factors. And we're excited to bring some of those things forward to you today. So a little bit about Infinity. We are a fully integrated agency, which means that we cover everything you can imagine. We've been around for 26 plus years, team over 80, all working from home right now with a few in the office. And really clients all over the United States, and focusing on what we call P2P solutions, which is person to person. Really understanding the unique needs of the user and how to tell that story, and pride ourselves on being nimble and responsive in how we match client needs to consumer expectations.
Yeah, Thomas, I can jump in here in that we really wanted to establish the lens that we look through from a marketing perspective, and it is one that's fully integrated. So whether it be traditional media relationships that you might have here locally, we acknowledge that this audience today is primarily comprised of small, medium-sized businesses that operate locally and regionally. So we want to break it down and look through the lens of a very fragmented marketplace as we've gone through a digital acceleration since COVID-19's been in place, and acknowledge where some areas that you and your team can roll your sleeves up, get dirty in some areas where you can make changes, and then some areas where probably it makes sense to bring in a subject matter expert. SEO or web would be a great example there. But we're gonna consider all this as we talk through the changing landscape and how consumer behavior is changing as well.
Yeah, and that also means as we go through this presentation, we want to encourage you to ask some questions, use that chat feature. Even if it's in a realm that maybe we're not directly speaking to, we do have a huge kind of reservoir of experience so we can answer any questions that relate to something you may have. So don't hold back. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible and share some of our thoughts and expertise. So here's what we're going to be looking at today. Specifically, we're going to talk consumer behavior. We're going to talk about how you can adjust your strategy to match some of those. And then ultimately, how can you take advantage of messaging around what's happening in the space and the innovations that we're seeing with everybody moving into a more online environment. Since obviously we're traveling less, we're not even in the office as much, and really spending more time with our digital devices and media. So let's look at consumption and behavior. The first thing that really changes is the way that we used to interact with media across our devices. So you probably have touched as many as 4 screens already today, from your phone to your desktop. Maybe some of you have a tablet. Some of you have watched a TV Some of you have connected to a laptop this morning. So really, we're still waking up and getting onto the phones, but maybe we're not going to the gym anymore. So I'm losing some of that podcast opportunity, some of that watching that I would have if I'm at the gym. I'm also not as ingrained in the commute that maybe I was. So again, thinking about how we would connect with information on our way to work. And then once we're at work, we're spending less time, obviously, on those desktop or in those work systems because we're not there. And then throughout the day, thinking about different things outside of our work environment. What else will we connect? We're just not doing those experiences. But where we are is once we get home, we're connecting in a lot of different ways. So whether that's preparing for dinner or preparing for family time, and then really that prime time hour becomes very important again. 7, 8, 9 p. We're watching television, we're watching something streaming, and we're probably also watching our phones. You can see I had a background there. We're watching our second screen experience, whether we're on Twitter or Facebook, or maybe some of you are on TikTok. Those experiences are still happening and can be very advantageous to know that. So focusing our timing around that is going to be important.
Yeah, Thomas, I can jump in here off the last slide. We do want to take a pre-COVID look and look at some latest Nielsen reporting. This is basically connected consumption across Q3 of 18 and Q3 of 2019. A few trends that we saw. Live TV, represented in the light blue there. Live TV consumption was decreasing. So I think broadcast TV, cable TV, satellite TV, we'll call that linear TV moving forward, decreasing there. But where you see big increase in yellow, which is consumption on app, web, on a smartphone. So spending time in an ESPN app, or spending time in a CNN or a Fox News app, or the Weather Channel app, or maybe some game apps. Time there's going up dramatically. I mean, you can see in 1 year's time, pre-COVID, already up, close to an hour and a half, or right at an hour and a half increase year over year. It's grown even more since COVID. But the other thing that you can see here, and it's represented in dark green, it's internet connected devices. And we're going to talk about digital video. And if you aren't doing video today in some form or fashion, whether it's organic on social or you're doing 15, 30-second video to reach out to consumers through other channels, that's definitely an area to be looking at. And Thomas, I think you have a few things we're going to talk more about video here in a moment.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're all experiencing that. Some of us are watching more on our screens. So here's a look at what happened right when the work from home order took place. So on the chart, you're looking at a couple things. On the left side, week of February 2nd, here's the top video streaming apps. So YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, probably really familiar with those. Twitch, you may not be familiar with, but it's a streaming service that people can set up and they can stream video games. People can watch them. A lot of makeup tutorials, a lot of DIY things will happen in that space. So Twitch is really user-generated content. MX Player, Disney Plus, YouTube TV, Tubi TV, and ESPN were in the top 10. But pretty quickly, in a short amount of time, in the short month of February to March, we saw some big changes here. So while your top 4 look to be the same, Roku and Pluto TV really jumped up. And Roku is what you would call a streaming device, where I could have other channels on there, but they rolled out a content platform. And then also you had Pluto TV, who made some big changes. They got bought by Viacom, and they're really a streaming service that has probably 200 channels that are available for free, that a lot of them are 24/7 channels. So you can see a 24/7 channel about American Gladiator. So a lot of 80s and 90s program that's fairly inexpensive for them is really how they made their bones. But then Viacom bought them and started adding a lot of CBS content onto the platform for Pluto TV. So you can download it. It's ad supported. You can get on the platform. You can have your ads actually shared through that platform. But it's a really interesting way that we're seeing digital video, especially content players, roll out into larger spaces. And this is where we start to talk about the difference between what we call a CTV and OTT. So Bo, tell us, what is that CTV that we hear so much about in the home?
Yeah, CTV stands for connected TV, and that would be the biggest screen in the house, right? The flat screen, the 55, 65 inch that's in the living room, in the sitting room, and you've got internet connected to that. It's an internet connected TV. Could be an Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, Chromecast. Might be a smart TV, a Samsung or a Sony smart TV. And that connected TV, when we say connected TV, that's a campaign where it's pure connected TV that I'm reaching an audience through that largest screen in the home.
Yeah.
Hulu, Netflix, several of these examples on here. Now, some of these are a blend. OTT would be over the top, and that just stands that I'm bypassing satellite or cable or linear TV. And OTT actually, OTT could be on the big screen, but it also could be on my device, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I could be watching Hulu on my phone, for example, and I could be experiencing OTT ads through Hulu on my smartphone, or even something like Pluto TV on my smartphone. The big idea here for us is, as we work through this first section and talk about consumer behavior, consumers are consuming more video than ever before, and it's becoming an expectation as brands and companies look to communicate with them to create awareness and work them down your sales funnel. Video is an opportunity that you need to be exploring. And one more idea here for me, Thomas, before we move on, is that you see Roku and Pluto highlighted in the bottom right. Those are free platforms. So Hulu I pay for, Amazon Prime comes with my Prime membership, I pay for it. Netflix I pay for. You know, on those top 5 right there, YouTube and Twitch would be the only that are free. Well, now you have these connected TV opportunities that are free, and they're supported by ads. So I'm getting this new rush of consumers coming in. There's no barrier to entry. They don't have to pay a monthly fee. And now we have the opportunity to expose them through ad-supported platforms as they consume connected TV.
Oh, and Thomas, I'm going to interject with a question, if you don't mind, for just a moment. How does a business, how does an organization know which platform is best for them?
Ooh, that's a great question. Carlos, a lot of that goes down to knowing your audience, and then, you know, working with a really great partner that can help you identify the audiences and which networks they're on more than any of the others. So if you go to the content, if you know you're speaking to, say, professional women, right, we can identify what networks that they're on more often than others. If you're looking for DIYers, obviously HGTV and others go into the mix. So we can utilize Roku, we can utilize Sling TV, we can utilize a lot of those OTT services to identify and find those networks. Sometimes you just want the content they consume more so than the individual. So, you know, you've got maybe I have a game store. Target people that watch gaming. I want to target people that are into sci-fi and other things. So I deploy across those networks. But it really, at its core, it's going to be know who you want to find in your direct audience. And then we can match networks, programming, all kind of digital opportunities across the myriad of things that you're looking at. Most of these have ads. Netflix doesn't. Amazon Prime doesn't, but YouTube TV does. YouTube obviously does. Hulu can. Disney Plus doesn't, but most of these that you're seeing really climb will have ads. In fact, that leads us right into the next one, because what we look at is February to March, so the big shift and when people started changing habits and staying home. But this is as of last week. So as of last week, July 23rd, this is the list. It looks a little bit different. Disney Plus jumped up. You've got something at the top called Peacock Television that didn't exist in March, where NBC said, we want to enter the streaming game. And by the way, this is another free service. So people can watch Peacock TV, NBC content, a little bit of original content on our platform that's ad supported. So once again, those partners and those agencies that can deploy ads across that OTT space can actually have your ads now show up on Peacock TV. You also have HBO Max, which didn't exist back in March. So HBO is NBC again, and others coming together and say, we want to promote all of HBO's premium content, plus some ad-supported content from our network partners and other programs that we've bought, and original content only on HBO Max. So that's a new platform that came out. And then you see at the bottom, a couple of things that become relevant that jumped out. So MLB TV, their app is showing up, and the NBA app, because we're seeing sports invigorate again and people getting excited about watching live sports. So those are definitely heavily ad supported in ways, again, to utilize OTT platforms and programmatic buying to get in that space if those sports audiences, if you think you're looking for in your reach. So any thoughts about these?
Well, my last comment as we transition over, and we can keep moving. But my big comment would be, you see that this CTV, this digital streaming video space, is becoming more and more crowded. You've got big players rolling out products and services to get into the space, and that's becoming the anticipation and the forecast for the future is that linear TV, again, broadcast, cable, satellite, you're going to have more and more leakage and subscribers lost on TV platforms like DirecTV or Spectrum, Comcast, and you're going to have that's going to be moving over to connected TV. So anybody here that has video assets and not on connected TV would highly recommend it. Anybody here that's placing broadcast TV, you get great reach from broadcast TV, but an opportunity to explore connected TV or OTT and use those video assets in a more targeted manner. And Carlos had the great question. It is about the audience, and the cool thing about a lot of these digital platforms, it's not necessarily what they're watching, but it's that audience. So whether Thomas is watching the Golf Channel or Thomas is watching something on ad-supported Hulu, I'm going after Thomas no matter where he is, and I'm really agnostic to the channel, but I'm going after Thomas through that particular channel.
And then in a few minutes, we're actually going to share how that tracking happens across users and whatever they're watching or what device they're on. So we'll share that with you. One thing we did want to include that we have seen as another shift in audience behavior is people aren't just consuming more content than ever. They're creating more content than ever. And this will be important when you get into that messaging phase of understanding that people are in a creating space. And it's not just one singular generation. We do see growth from the younger generations, more so than the older. But even your boomers, 2% of them are creating content. They're creating YouTube channels. They're out there creating stuff on Twitter or other places, really going after an audience. In fact, a lot of them are game streaming on Twitch. You see Gen X, you see millennials, and then you see Gen Z. So not only are they watching more than ever before, but they're actually creating content. So you're not only competing with all the stuff that's out there, but now you've got all these individual users. So in your strategies, it's important to know that your audiences are really active, and how can we match them where they are in the spaces that they're comfortable with. So now we're going to talk about adjusting strategy, and we're really going to look at the funnel when we think about that. So we've talked about a lot of the changes, especially in the digital space, but now how can we take advantage of that and understand that every phase of that user, if I'm trying to sell them a product, a good, or a service, we have different tools to message them to really get them and what we call nurturing them through the funnel into the actual purchase phase. So we'll look at a couple of things here and explain really the tactics of how this can be advantageous for you as you're planning on, again, the products, goods, and services that you sell, and how do we utilize all these different tools and figure out, one, who's my audience, but how do I reach them?
Yeah, Thomas, to your point there as well, there are a lot of tools and channels that we can leverage here, but some of us, based off resources and scalability and what our marketing teams look like, or maybe you are the individual in charge of marketing and you're implementing and executing, here's an opportunity to identify, maybe a direct mail campaign's not right for me, but can I write several blogs a month or a quarter? A terrestrial radio campaign's not right for my business, but can I do a video to post on social? So I would just encourage everybody to be thinking, right, Thomas, awareness, upper funnel, consideration, mid funnel, and then acquisition there at the bottom. What can you be doing versus what might you need an outside partner or an expert to come in and support you with?
Absolutely. So great point. Some of these things may be cost prohibitive to get into, but anybody can record a tutorial video and promote it as a webinar. It just takes your time. So now you're doing your hourly, your resource investment in your people and your expertise. And those become very useful in these spaces. Again, matching that creator kind of environment that we're seeing across generations. And then you get into consideration, social media. We're going to spend a little bit more time on social, but that is going to be key if you're a small to medium-sized business that can really move the needle for you in sales for those goods or services. But SEO on your website is also key. That really takes some time. You can do a lot of online learning yourself to figure out how can I make sure that my website is the question or is the answer to somebody's question online. But there's a lot of other components that get technical. So bringing in a partner could be helpful there. Or if you've got that expertise, create a case study. So move a step beyond your blog and actually create more content that goes in depth to show not only does my product, good, or service make good sense, but here's how it can actually improve your life in X, Y, and Z. And then ultimately you get to acquisitions, thinking about landing pages. Are you clear on your pricing, your live demos? Again, bringing in those tools that we have that people are familiar with now in Zoom and other things. How can you really utilize video to help solve and close the purchase?
Yeah, Thomas, before you transition off here, marketing sales funnel, been around forever. A lot's changed in terms of behavior and also market fragmentation, but we'll be sending this deck out after, I believe the chamber team will be sending this out. But a great exercise, if you don't have something like this mapped out for your business, go to each of those stages: awareness. What is your message? What's your goal? What do you feel like you need to accomplish in awareness? What do you need to accomplish in discovery? And sort of move down, say, what's my goal for somebody in their mindset in my sales funnel? And then what's the best way for me to go and reach them and communicate that? So that's just a really simple exercise where you can establish some goals, some benchmarks, and then plan how you're going to go achieve them. This would be one of those things, anybody that want to have a conversation with us, I think our contact info will be in this deck as well. Feel free to reach out to us. But just want that, Thomas, as you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this, again, can be human resources. It's what time do you have to invest in really creating content or storytelling around your business. So this is one of the cooler things to really think about is how do we do all this targeting? And we have some fairly sophisticated tools and a great partner in Google. We're a premier Google partner. We work with the Trade Desk. We work directly with Facebook. So we can make sure that when we're identifying, going back to Carlos, how do I reach these people? That once we've reached them, we can track them and share messaging to them. And we've all experienced this. You've gone to Amazon, you've searched for a pair of shoes, you go online, and then you start to see shoe ads follow you around. Well, that's really a cross-device journey in how we understand programmatic tracking. So generally it starts out, I'll be exposed to an ad, and then that ad I can either engage with, which takes me on to a little bit of a different journey where I go to a website, I look at a few things on that website. Now the ads can be, say I did go and look at shoes, but then I looked at a specific dress shoe versus a tennis shoe. So now my ads are all around dress shoes. So I can be very specific and continue to nurture that user to the ad or to the style of things they were searching for. And then from there, hopefully that we retarget them enough, 5 times. If they've seen that ad and they haven't engaged, maybe we do it a couple more times, but we can eventually phase them out because we realize that after 10 times, they're probably not going to engage. So we can focus those ad dollars directly on an engaged audience.
Thomas, at what point, at what level do customers find that annoying?
That's a great,
and
10
what's
is a pretty easy cutoff. Yeah, so 10 exposes within a specific thing. And think about your Facebook experience, because a lot of us have this in common. We go on Facebook and we'll see the same ad repeatedly, and eventually it becomes noise or it becomes a negative because we're just getting bombarded with it. And a lot of times it's your really larger budget companies. Maybe it's Disney Plus. How many of you saw Hamilton ads when Disney Plus was over and over and over again? And it wasn't sophisticated enough to know if you have Disney Plus or if you watched it. We have frequency caps that we use all the time, depending on the specific audiences and the product. We know high involved things I really have to think about as far as the solution. Now, we don't hit them with the same ad. We keep them in that journey, but we call sequential. So Carlos, say you're in the market for a car, very big idea of going and doing a lot of research. We're not going to hit you with the same car ad over and over again. We're going to hit you with maybe a general ad, and then we're going to get into some other things. We're going to show you the technology in the car. We're going to show you the comfort in the car, still in that car space, but we're going to diversify what that ad looks like to you. And again, if there's no engagements, we're going to cycle you out. We want those ad dollars to go on people that we think are going to engage or convert versus people that are just, old-fashioned window shopping.
Yeah, Thomas, I totally agree. I just want to add one thing to that, which exactly depends on the category, car and home versus apparel or shoes or sunglasses, and think about that buying cycle. So it's going to be different for your industry. The other is that ad fatigue is a real thing in the digital space. We've probably all seen it. I've got a company hitting me right now, and I've actually, because I've seen it, I've been counting, and they've hit me. It's got to be 20 plus right now. This company's hit me with this ad, and it's the same ad. And ad fatigue's real, and that if you get the same thing over and over, you get ad blindness. I ignore it, or even it actually turns me off. So what we want to do is we want to create multiple pieces of creative, and we want to continue communicating in different ways, sharing different information, educating and nurturing down the journey. So I think it's dependent on your industry, but also how to tell that story. And again, Carlos, starting with video, I show you a 30-second video, and then I have 10 different 6-second videos, and I'm hitting you with all these different pieces of creative. That experience is different than you getting hit with the same thing repeatedly at a high frequency.
Yeah. And the last thing on this slide I want you to understand is it's not always the same ad. We're looking at different media mixes. So once you've encountered an ad, our software can go and identify that particular device. And normally you're going to encounter it on your phone first. But when you go home and you connect to your Wi-Fi, now I can actually, as opposed to hitting on your phone over and over again, I can have that OTT commercial show up and then be involved with the programming that you're around. So cross-device becomes very important to also diversify the types of ads that you're seeing. Now, we've talked a lot about mobile, but here's a great stat that we found and we wanted to share with you, because we don't want to overlook the power of the desktop experience. Because what we saw back in November of last year was the real switch to where more mobile traffic happened than desktop traffic. Generally, you wouldn't expect that trend to reverse. But what we've seen now in the COVID era is that desktop has taken over mobile again. And we suspect this because a lot of people are working from home, so they don't have to be on their phone all the time. They can actually just, because they're working from home, on their second screen or on another browser, they're pulling up and they're browsing and they're experiencing more things on that desktop than they were on their mobile. So this was a great stat. We wanted to bring this forward just so that you don't overlook the power of that traditional laptop or desktop experience. Now, some keys to really understand where to spend and how am I going to evaluate these things. So cost versus return. What does traditional versus digital look like? We talked a lot about broadcast TV. We talked a lot about digital TV and a little bit about broadcast. But really understand your values there, because you can be so specific to your audience, where broadcast is a great broad tool. That digital television can really be more of a scalpel to find that direct audience that you want to look for. You'll be able to get more reporting on your digital reports because you can see directly what converted, which ad type worked the best. And then you'll also be able to select geos where maybe you weren't before. So, do you have a thought?
Well, I was just going to point out, Tracy put a comment in the chat, and I think it's insightful. We say here, evaluate traditional versus digital. We are a fully integrated marketing agency, and so we believe in out-of-home, which is what Tracy shared some information on. We believe in broadcast TV. So there are all kinds of opportunities traditionally, and for us, it's really about the mix. It's about the company, the business goals, the expectations, the budget. But to Tracy's point, based off the goals and what you're looking for and your timeline for return, out-of-home can be viable, but we would definitely want to have it working in conjunction with the integrated mix. So I do think Tracy has some good nuggets in there, again, based off your industry and category to consider.
Yeah. Well, that goes directly to that time versus dollars. So what can I do on my own? What can I bring a partner in for? Where do I need to be? And really understanding the advantages of each of those. We work a lot with out-of-home all over the United States, digital boards, static boards. So that same thought process goes into everything, as in really be critical about the dollars that you're spending and the return that they're providing. Because when you do that, especially when you dive into your reporting, you're going to find some successes there. And you don't have to diversify everything. If you're finding some real success that isn't maximized, continue to invest in that space. So now let's look at messaging. Specifically, we want to jump into social messaging first, and we'll give you some high strategy ideas. Social for small to medium businesses is key because it can provide so much opportunity to reach audiences, to make connections, and then ultimately convert sales for those goods and services. So here's what we wanted to share with today, as of May, what networks are seeing the most growth right now because of people working from home or schooling from home, whatever it is. People just aren't traveling as much. So YouTube was way up, no surprise there. People are consuming more video. People are creating more video on the platform. Facebook was way up. Instagram was up. Zoom, we would expect. Facebook Messenger, Snapchat. Now, we haven't talked a lot about Snapchat, but there's plenty of ad opportunities for Snapchat, especially if you're looking for a college data audience. Pinterest for DIYers, TikTok growth, Twitter, all of them are up. LinkedIn, all of them are up. So what advantage are you taking in that? Are you creating more content to match the fact that more people are online? Probably a good time to do that. But your number one challenge is going to be your resources, which is your time. But your time investment can outweigh cost. So if you're spending dollars on the platform now, but you're only producing, say, 1 to 2 pieces of content a week, or less than that in some cases. When we came on board and partnered with some clients just for strategy, we found out that they were only doing 1 to 2 posts a month. Well, if you want to be relevant, you've got to do more. We recommend anywhere from 1 to 3 posts a week to get started. So your time investment is going to go up, but that can displace having to spend media dollars on the platform for boosting. Secondly, monitoring and responding is key. If it's a positive comment, give them a thank you, respond back to those questions. If somebody submits a question, be responsive and reply back to that question, because that's going to help you close the deal or close that business and create a positive relationship with that user. That can be more advantageous than you can imagine. Going into groups, commenting into groups that are relative to what you're doing can also be impactful and important, and create, again, a positive relationship. And an important, easy rule to remember, now I'm going to make some leaps here and just in the math and say, if you're posting 5 pieces of content a week, so over 7 days, you're posting 5 pieces a week, the 80-20 rule, which is an old-fashioned marketing rule for social, would mean that only one of those 5 posts would be a direct hard sell for a product. That's your price, that's your discount, that's whatever else it is. Your other posts should be informing, so that's where you get to teach people about the product, you get to teach people about your people, share them and make that community interest about what you're doing in your community. All those things become relevant to that audience, especially in the social space, which at its core is social. So 80-20 is a great rule to kind of put for yourself and figure out 1 out of 5 posts. I want to be a hard sell. The rest of them I need to be about the culture of my company or what's going on with my people or my community. And then divest or separate into multiple social networks. And this is where it can be a challenge. The easiest here are going to be Facebook and Instagram. LinkedIn is awesome and really growing. So if you want to reach a professional C-suite network or decision-making network for your product, LinkedIn can be a phenomenal tool for that. But if you're putting all your baskets into one network and that network goes down, which has happened, or there's a challenge on that network, or your audience isn't there, then you're really not reaching the full breadth and depth of each of those network opportunities, while understanding that each of them have their own culture. Facebook is a very different audience than Twitter, and LinkedIn is going to be a very different audience than what you may find on YouTube. So do you have a thought?
Well, yeah, just a comment here, actually a question from Megan that's relevant to this slide. I know we're hitting the home stretch. She says, for the small business owner who's not a digital marketing expert, would you say social is a good place to start, or is there another area where they should dip their toe in?
I think social is an easy place to start. There's not a lot of risk as long as you're responding to comments. Now, there are some things that get crazy on any time that you're opening up a communication channel. That would happen to be in my shop, and I've worked a whole lot of years in retail. So no matter where you are, you're going to deal with customer feedback, and it's going to be challenging. Sometimes it can help us reflect and make a change, or sometimes we just got to understand people are venting in some way. But social is a great place to start because you get to control the narrative, and that's important. And there's lots of tutorials out there for Facebook that you can jump onto.
Yeah, I would concur. If I'm not doing anything in digital today and I'm on this call or otherwise, I'm a small to medium sized business and it's like, where do I get started? I would totally agree. Social would be the place to do it. And I would be thinking very specifically about video on social. And then you can even put Tom, and I think Carlos might jump in here, but $10, $20 to actually boost a post. So I go and research content creation for my industry on social, and I'd also look at how to increase my reach through sponsored or boost posts on social.
Yep.
Great place to start. Carlos, did you have a question or comment?
No, but I did want to just thank you for sharing that bit of information about how smaller organizations, smaller businesses can engage and try to feel their way through this. How much of this is science, and how much of it is feel, if you will?
So that's it's a trap question, because there is a ton of science behind it. There's thousands of different components, because really what you're fighting against as a small business owner or medium business owner on social is the machine algorithm. Because if you don't hit all the buttons that machine algorithm says, I believe that this post is worth the people that I'm about to put in their feed. That's what the computer's doing. It's worth their time to see this content. If you don't understand a little bit of the science to that, then you're going to have a harder time getting started. But the core and how to make that easiest is create content that you would like. So Carlos, if you've got a small business, you're starting up and you're creating a post just because you feel like you got to create something, but it's not something that you would engage with if it showed up in your feed, why would you expect your audience to engage with it? Because they're not. So at your core, think about what you would engage with. Again, know that, I want to share what I'm doing in community. I want to share my people. I want to share the quality of my product and my service, how I've helped people, or how that product testimonials are phenomenal for that. Managing the reviews are phenomenal for that. And that really helps you get out ahead of the algorithm. And once you get that underway, then there's a lot of information on the internet that can share with you how to really understand the meta game or the small components and pieces on how to go from reaching 200 people to 300 people, or from growing your page to, 100 people right when you start to 1,000 to 5,000 followers. That's where the science really comes into play. But at its core, if you're not creating something that you're going to like, other people aren't going to like it.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, Thomas, and that be genuine. Know who you are and go be yourself. It's a lot like relationships in real life, and some of us get along, some of us don't. So I think you got to be true to yourself, know yourself, and then go represent that across social, and then go back to the funnel and have a strategy. What am I really looking to accomplish with this particular post? Is it to share something about my company? Is it to share an opportunity? Is it to differentiate and educate? So, but I think being genuine and true to yourself and your brand would be a great place to start, and just go make content.
Yeah. And Bo, that leads beautifully into this messaging slide that we're going to talk about. Of now that we understand, I'm going to take the leap, I'm going to go into social, what do I say and how do I say it? So one, be relevant to your audience, be community focused, right? And you can provide some entertainment and relief to people that are really looking for that now. Just be aware and be very smart about that. That doesn't mean what you think is funny, everybody is going to think it's funny, because that's where you're going to get into trouble more than anything else. If you wouldn't say it, right, to your grandma is a great way to put it, or to your best customer that's in your store and in your face, you shouldn't say it on social. And that's a good rule of thumb. But the experience, we also want you to think of it in this way. You're talking to people in 3 different capacities. One, first, as a human, right? P2P, person to person, no matter if I'm trying to reach a CEO, right, or I'm trying to meet a decision maker, or I'm trying to reach somebody in the sales department. A person's a human. Secondly, they're an employee. So now make it relevant, and how can you help them succeed in their job? And then ultimately, as the customer, how can you provide customer service that will create a long-term relationship with them? Social can provide all of that for you, especially as you funnel them down, nurture them down from knowing who you are to seeing the positive benefits of what you're providing, and then ultimately through that final sale. So, Bo, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Yep. Carlos, I don't know if you had a comment or a question. I see Maddie just put something in the chat.
Yeah, Maddie asked, how do you know you're reaching your target market via social media? Does it matter, or is it better for large exposure, even if only a handful of those exposed to it is your target market?
Great question. Facebook allows you to have a lot of data, and they have it in 2 places. And you can Google these and you can find them. Or if you'd like to reach out to us through email, I'm happy to send you some links. So the first is called Facebook Insights. That's your basic analytics platform that's going to show up in for your brand page. And that's going to show you, say you have an expectation of reaching moms in their early 30s. So if your page, when you go to look at it, is heavily, say, moms, but maybe they're 60 plus, then you're missing your target audience a little bit. Or you've got a higher ratio to men versus women if that's what you're selling your product. But Insights can give you all that. It can also help you with your geos, because if you're seeing most of your geos are coming from California, but you're not selling any products online, then you've got a geo mix of something that's challenging there. So Facebook Insights can provide a lot of data. And there's also another tool, and it's a little bit separate, but it's very similar in name, but it's Facebook Audience Insights. And that's where you can get all kind of information about the people that are on your page, specifically to your brand page, including location, what type of career are they in, all these other things that can help you identify if you're on the right path to finding your audience mix. But they'll provide a lot of that data for you. You just got to know where to look. And it's not always easy to find.
Well, Thomas and Bo, I want to thank you all for joining us on the show today. I think, one of the key points that I've taken from today's episode, social media has opened up a lot of opportunity for smaller enterprises to get in the game, to get in the advertising and the marketing game. You don't have to have a big budget to engage and market via the various platforms that are out there right now. But it's going to take a little bit of courage and exploration to see what works best for your organization. But there are certainly platforms out there that could work.
Yeah, it goes back to that entrepreneurial spirit. Get out there, explore, create. You'll find some successes. You'll refine. You'll get better. But you got to get some practice in the game.
We don't like to end the show without sharing some words of wisdom with our attendees. So, Bo, Thomas, any inspiring words that you would like to share with folks today?
Bo, what you got?
Thomas, I can kick us off. Yeah, we're in challenging times, no doubt, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. So I would encourage everyone out there that a lot can be accomplished just by loving your fellow man, team member, family, and out there on social empathy is always great. And you said it well, Carlos. Be courageous, go try new things, and hopefully we look forward to seeing some of our attendees out doing some new and unique different things on social. But go out there, spread a little love, and encourage those that are in your network and social circles.
Yeah. Look, innovation is going to be key. We're seeing it all over the place. There are some industries that are going to have a real hard time recovering. Movie theaters, restaurants are trying to figure it out, especially as we kind of plateau or figure out what does the next 3 to 6 months look like. But innovation is going to be key. Figuring out the digital space, and the easiest way you can get into that is with social. And that doesn't always mean it's going to be Facebook. If you're very visual, Instagram is going to be a better network for you. But create until you find that niche, and hard work will pay off.
Good. Thank you, Thomas and Bo. And I'll just say, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So get out there, create things, and make things happen.
Yeah.
Thank you all again for joining us today. A recording of today's show will be shared on the Greenville Chamber's website and sent to attendees along with a survey. So don't forget that this is part of an ongoing series. Don't forget to complete the survey. Also, we're going to send a link to today's presentation as well, so be on the lookout for that. This is an ongoing series, and next week we plan on discussing the new stimulus package, provided there is a new stimulus package next week. I'm hearing that there may not be a new stimulus package approved by Congress until perhaps mid-August. So if we don't talk about the stimulus package next week, we'll find something else to talk about, and we look forward to seeing you.